In typical Fringe fashion, where we pick up in season 2 is exactly the moment that we left off in season 1. And in also typical Fringe fashion, what you think you saw at the end of season 1 is not at all what actually happened. So literally the first scene of the second season is the aftermath of an event that happens at the end of season 1, and that launches us into the story for season 2. It introduces us immediately, sort of accidentally, to our new character. It radically changes one of the physicalities of one of our characters, and it shuffles up how the Fringe division works inside the FBI, and now, frankly, outside the FBI. The relationship with Walter, between Peter and Walter, has changed massively. I mean, when Peter was brought in the first episode, in the pilot episode, he really, really did not want to be there, and I think he had some inkling that his father was not what he had pretended to be in Peter's childhood, but he had no idea what it was that he was stepping into, and he was a very, very, very reluctant member of the team until a certain point at which his natural curiosity, I think, took over, and then that latent sense of duty that we all have to our parents. And I think he started to discover that he actually enjoyed being a son, though he really wasn't capable of admitting it, and he was very tough on his dad. I think at a certain point he really enjoyed being a part of this family and belonging to this family in a way that I don't think Peter had ever belonged to anything in his entire life. In my estimation of how the Fringe world works, there's also the brother-sister dynamic. There's the Peter and Olivia dynamic, and I think Peter's also very protective of Olivia now, in the same way that she sort of falls inside his family. He's decided to take these people on, and he wants to be a part of this now, which is why I think in season 2 he becomes so much more proactive. He's decided, you know what, I'm going to stay. I believe in Walter, that's sort of my dad figure. I have Olivia, this is sort of my sister figure, we're in this together, and I'm going to stay here and protect my people. And I think that's how he sort of launches into season 2. In season 2, again, we're going to see genetic mutation, we're going to see interdimensional travel, and we're going to start to unravel who it is that's been behind all of these things that are Fringe. Fringe science is the central idea of Fringe division. The central idea of our show being that everything that we're dealing with is just slightly on the edge of the envelope. It's nothing quite on the other side, nothing pure fantasy, but it's the world that we live in just heightened a little bit, and everything pushed out to the fringe. That's where the word comes from. That's where the title comes from, I should say. It has always been my experience that the absurdity of real pain eventually leads you to laughter, even if it's a rueful laughter. So I think when you have something like Fringe, where the situations are so bizarre, if one of the characters isn't at least saying for the audience, oh, come on, it starts to look silly. And I think, it's good. It's like a pressure relief. Maybe it's just me. It's a defense mechanism. But when things get too stressful, I tend to laugh. I tend to find humor. I tend to find, the worst moments in life actually sort of comic, because you take on this craziness and you go, oh my God, this is the end of the world. And then you realize, well, it's not really the end of the world. I'm just being crazy. But really, if Fringe works well, you should be able to flip on your TV on Thursdays, watch that hour and go, man, that show kicked ass. You don't need to know, each case, each event presents a beginning, middle, and end. So if you just tune in for that week, hopefully you're just going to get taken on this crazy ride. I mean, one week you might have a Where You Pine in a plane. The next week you might have people's brains oozing out of their nose. Another week a girl's head might explode onto a plate glass door. You never know. The observer sort of stands outside the mythology of Fringe and is an observer, and constantly is popping up in places that he or they shouldn't be, and we haven't quite figured out, or I'm sure they have, but I don't know yet, whether it's linked into the other dimension, whether it's linked into several other dimensions, if they're an entirely other race, if they're a version of us that maybe has figured out if we can travel across space, then maybe we can travel across time. There is this incredible